For the past 125 years, Cohasset Golf Club has grown from a small group of 30 golfers into a thriving community of more than 600 members coming from various walks of life. It has served as a place where members can unwind, dine, socialize, and enjoy a variety of club activities with friends and family.
Most people who play here really have fun. They enjoy themselves. They're great people. They have great senses of humor. So I've had thousands of great moments out here.
But the journey that brought us here began long ago, as the club has had a rich history on its path developing into what we see today. In 1894, the sport of golf began rising in popularity as clubs began forming across the nation. During this year, Henry M. Whitney, an influential entrepreneur in the Boston area, leased the property that is still used today. Being that many of Whitney's children lived in Cohasset during their youth, the man felt a connection to the town and bought large swaths of land. While Whitney provided the space to play, it was William Campbell, an itinerant course architect, who designed the original 6 holes at the country club, in the Brookline, and at Cohasset. The founders of the club asked Campbell to organize the course as a circle around their modest clubhouse. 5 years later, after a storm uprooted many trees and disrupted most of the course, Campbell returned to design the course to include 9 holes and updating some of the original holes. During these initial years, the club spent only $735 a year, with the manager and greenskeeper only making $40 a month.
When I was a caddy master, it's interesting, I was making $15 a week. That's a week. I could have made more caddying than I was a caddy master.
Over the next decade, the club acted as a place where influential politicians and wealthy businessmen could meet and play a few holes while discussing many, many different topics. During the year 1909, Henry Whitney offered to sell the land for the price of $25,000 to members. The executive committee met to discuss purchasing the land as well as expanding the club's territory for future updates. To finance the transaction, the EC decided to sell bonds to club members. By purchasing the land, the club now had full ownership, and by 1917 owned the full 9 holes. Membership also increased, as many people sought to be part of the club community. As the 1920s began, the club had now doubled in size and would further grow from the purchase of the Whitney farm. Legendary golf course designer Donald Ross, who had done some redesign work in 1909, crafted the new 9 holes in the club's expansion. Once the Ross plan was completed, the club had finally settled on its 18-hole course, which opened in 1922. For the most part of the decade, the club saw great success.
I feel like one of the things that struck me about Cohasset when I first came was that it's a Donald Ross golf course. I mean, without the membership you don't have anything, but with a Donald Ross golf course you can attract a fabulous membership. So you get booked by a Scotsman at the beginning who was here to design the course, and then you've got a Scotsman now as the general manager, and all the 125 years in between. There's a lot of interesting stories.
Members range from Boston mayors to Red Sox players. Celebrities like Humphrey Bogart and Bob Hope were always welcome whenever they visited Cohasset. The club even received a surprise visit from legendary golfer Bobby Jones, who won the Grand Slam in 1930. But as the 1930s ended, the club was hit by great financial distress due to the Great Depression, but more so due to World War II. By the end of World War II, the club had only 70 members. Of that 70, only half could afford the full price of membership. The club lay empty for most of the year. Sam Bartow, the club president during this era, was the man responsible for keeping the community intact throughout this turmoil. Bartow would personally mow the fairways and gave much of his own wealth to keep the club afloat. At one point, a man looking to establish a celery and asparagus farm offered to purchase the land, and at this point the offer was strongly considered. But in the end, the community endured, and as the 1940s came to a close, the club entered a new era. Membership qualifications were heavily relaxed, allowing for a wider demographic of members.
I think that we're really expanding upon our membership, and I like that. I think it was always just, it's a golf club. I feel now that the other sports are starting to have an impact, and we're not like looking at them like they're the, ugly stepsister to the golf. There's a bigger community now with the paddle tennis and the tennis that I think carries as much weight as the golfers, which is nice.
Slowly but surely, the club's financial success began to return, although not always a smooth transition. In 1964, the club's maintenance facility caught fire, destroying valuable equipment, resulting in a $25,000 loss of property. Later in 1971, the original clubhouse, which was built in 1899, burned down. The executive committee moved to build a new clubhouse at the cost of $450,000. The redesigned clubhouse was meant to reflect the style of the old one, but with contemporary benefits. The new clubhouse revitalized the club, resulting in an increase in membership. The club had finally turned the corner. For 125 years, the club has stood through times of prosperity and tragedy. Yet through it all, the community has remained and grown stronger.
Community is the perfect word for it. It's a bunch of good friends, people who all come together to do things that they love to do, play tennis, play golf, just eat the wonderful food that we have here. It's a special place.
Here's to the next 125 years at Cohasset Golf Club.